Today's episode of Negotiate Anything is sponsored in part by Shopify, Brevo, Cozy Earth, and Incogni. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you start, run, and grow your business. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Kwame. Brevo is an all-in-one marketing and CRM platform to help you connect with customers and grow smarter. Get started for free or use code ANYTHING50 to save 50% on starter and standard plans for the first 3 months of your annual subscription at brevo.com/anything. Cozy Earth makes everyday comfort feel like a real upgrade. From unbelievably soft sleepwear to plush blankets, go to cozyearth.com and use the code Kwame for up to 20% off, and you'll get a post-purchase survey. Make sure you mention you heard about it here. Incogni helps you to take your personal data back by removing it from places online where it shouldn't be, helping to reduce your exposure to scams and identity theft. Use code ANYTHING for 60% off of an annual plan at incogni.com/anything. As always, you can find all of these deals in the show notes. Today we're chatting with Greg Roche, someone who used to dread those awkward networking events, feeling totally out of place and uncomfortable. But here's what makes his story hit home. He figured out a better path, one that's genuine, feels natural, and even enjoyable. Greg hasn't applied for a job since 2013, all because he mastered building real professional relationships without forced small talk, name tags, or elevator pitches. If you're looking to grow your career, open new doors, or just feel more confident connecting with people without coming off as fake, this episode is for you. By the end of it, you'll have a straightforward, comfortable plan to build a network that actually serves you. Let's get into it.
I used to be a terrible networker. I didn't know how to network. I was really awkward. I still am awkward when I go to networking events, and I have lots of little tricks now that I use. But the reason I got into this is in 2012, I got laid off. It was the first time I'd ever been laid off or fired from a job. Prior to that, I had this belief that you get a job, and if you're really good at your job and you do a good job and you stick with it, you'll get promoted, you'll get kept, you won't be the person that gets laid off. And I found out that was not true in 2012. And so I didn't really think I had a network, and I wasn't good at it. And I had to find a way to do it differently than what everybody was telling me to do. And I figured it out kind of on my own, and I ended up getting another job, and I landed. And the one thing I promised myself when I got another job is I would never stop networking. I would never be under networked again, as I call it. And so all these things I had done when I was trying to find a job, reaching out to old colleagues, getting in touch with people I knew, having these conversations, trying to help them out, telling them what they could do to help me, all those kind of things that over the years I've refined, I kept doing. And of course, once you have a job and you don't need anything, it's awesome to network because you can just help everybody else and you can just do stuff for other people. And then as I was doing that, people would say, like, you seem like you're pretty well connected, but you always talk about how you hate going to networking events. And I said, yeah, I don't. I try to avoid them. But they would say, well, how do you do that? Like, you keep getting new jobs, you keep going in new roles, people keep approaching you. You keep saying, like, you haven't applied for a job since 2013. Like, how do you keep getting jobs? And I was like, well, I just keep networking. And so I started teaching people how to do it, tried to coach them either one-on-one or groups. And then, over time, started the newsletter, wrote a book, and write out on LinkedIn. And so now it's just become, again, this thing I keep doing. And I never thought, growing up, I'm going to talk about networking in my later life. But now it's like, they say, like, if you could find that subject that you can talk about all day, do that, right? Find the thing you can talk about all day and just keep talking about it. And so now I'm at that point where, I have another business, I have my own stuff I do, but this networking is kind of this thing that if I could talk about one thing all day, it would be this, only because of how much it helped me in my life. And as I've helped other people, they've come to me and said, man, I used to be terrible at this. I hated this. And you've actually made this fun. And so that's the kind of stuff I like to hear. And that's the reason why I like to do this and help people and talk about it, just because it is such an awkward subject for a lot of people. And when they kind of understand there's a different way to do it, they're suddenly like, oh my gosh, you just solved this big pain in my life by changing the way I look at this. So totally started out of necessity. And one other side note, which I didn't say, is, when the first time I lost my job, it took me 3 months to find a new job, which that's not that bad, right? I thought it was terrible at the time. I did get laid off another time. So 5 years after that, I got laid off again. But that time, it took me 3 weeks to find a new job. So I turned months into weeks, and it was all because my network was already ready to go. And so when I kind of had an idea I was going to get laid off, I activated that. But from the time I was done with that job to the time I started the next one, it was only 3 weeks. So it really, if you've been doing it and it's a habit and you've been working on it, it's something that can really, really make a big difference in your life, in your career. What surprises people about networking when I talk to them a lot is where I tell them to start. When they say something to me like, I know I need to network. I mean, people tell me this all the time. They tell me you need to get out there and connect with people, and networking is the key to your career. And there's all sorts of cliches around it. And then they say, but I just don't know where to start. And my answer is, start with who you already know. And that surprises a lot of people, because when they think of networking, they think of going and meeting strangers and shaking hands and having an elevator pitch and trying to, establish this connection with somebody they've never met before. And I tell them to start with who they already know. And they kind of look at me and they say, Greg, that's weird, because I need to meet new people. I already know these people. Why would I start with them? And I explain it because, in a way, that we know people in our lives in a couple ways. We know them through proximity. And what I mean by proximity is the people that are just around us in our day-to-day lives. People we didn't choose to be around. They just happened to be in the same place. So when you went to college, there was a bunch of people you chose where to go to college, but you didn't know who else was going to be there. And you just met a bunch of people because they were in the same place. And you choose a job mainly because of the job and the company. And then there's a bunch of other people you work with, and you didn't pick them to come work with you. They were just in the same workplace. Maybe you live in a neighborhood and you like the neighborhood, but you didn't really know your neighbors until you started interacting with them. So throughout our lives, we've accumulated a network of people. We don't think of them as our network. They're our friends or our colleagues or our classmates, but they're part of our network. And that's how we know most people in our lives. Now, the second way we know people is because those people we already know introduce us to people they know. So introduction is how we get to know new people. And the last way is random stranger that you happen to, sit next to on a bus sometime that you struck up a conversation with. And we very rarely have those kind of people that stay in our lives. But the first two groups of people are the people who end up being our network. So we already have a network of people. We shouldn't just try to go find random strangers to try to get to know. We should start with people we already know. Use the people who are close to us, and then they're going to introduce us to new people. And so when I tell people that, they go, oh, okay, that's a little easier. Now I don't feel so intimidated. I don't feel like I have to make this amazing first impression. I don't have to have this great pitch. If I talk to the people I already know, hopefully they're going to know somebody they can introduce me to. And that's how I can grow my network. So that's usually the thing that people go, I never thought of it like that.
Yeah, this is great. I wish I would have heard this when I was at the beginning of my career, because it always seemed like it was something so intimidating. It's like, hey, go meet new people and then convince them to help you to accomplish your goals. It felt it felt kind of icky.
Yeah.
But what you helped us to recognize in a very short period of time is that we already have a network. We're just now going to have these relationships with a little bit more intentionality.
One of the things people don't realize is that you can reach out to people who you haven't talked to in a long time. I think that we often think if time has gone by, it's not going to make sense to reach out to somebody you haven't talked to in 5 years or so. So people will always say to me, well, if I send them a note, if I reach out to them, I text them, send them an email, send them a LinkedIn message, and I say, hey, how's it been? And it's been a number of years. They're going to sit there and be like, what? Why am I getting this message from Greg? Like, why? I haven't heard from him in forever. And I usually tell people, if you flip the script and you put yourself in their shoes and you think, if I got a message from that person who I haven't talked to in 5 years that said, hey, how are you doing? I thought of you the other day and was wondering how you are. How would you feel about that? And most people would say, I would love it. That would be great. I would love to get back in touch and talk to this person. And as a bonus, they reached out to me. I didn't have to do any of the work. So I'd love to get in touch with them. Now, keep in mind, you're also getting in touch with them and reconnecting. You're not doing that thing where you say, hey, I know we haven't talked in 5 years, but I really need you to do something for me. Can you help me get a job? That's not how you want to go about these conversations. That's not how you want to lead in. You want to generally be open to getting back in touch with this person, talking to them, being curious about what's going on with them, getting up to speed, getting up to date. And then you go through the conversation, you kind of get to the point where you start talking about what's going on in your life. But if you got that message that just said, hey, how are you doing? Let's catch up. You'd probably say, great, sounds good. When can we do that? So if that's how you would feel, then send that message to somebody, and probably 9 times out of 10, they're going to respond and say, yeah, let's talk. And I've told lots of people that, and I've had people say, I talked to this person I hadn't talked to in 20 years. And we got together and started talking, and it was just like old times. Like we caught up. It was great to talk to them. It was great reconnecting with them. And it was way easier than I thought it was going to be. And so those are some of the anxieties people tend to have when it comes to reconnecting or tapping into their existing network. They think because time has passed that they can't talk to people. And the reality is, again, if you got that message, if you think of it from the other person, it's kind of, I call it the golden rule of networking, but it's the golden rule of life. Treat other people how you'd like to be treated, or do unto others. If you think I would like to get that message, they're probably going to like to get that message from you.
Right. Oh, this is powerful. And I love the simplicity of this, because you're essentially eliminating the excuses that people have in their mind. Because a lot of times we overcomplicate the challenge, and I think it's the subconscious's attempt to undermine what we are attempting to do. And now I know for some people they're on board here, Greg, as we talk about this, but they said, well, you said 9 times out of 10. What about that one time? Rejection hurts. Rejection is scary. And so for those folks, because a lot of times it's a mental block that prevents them from doing this. What advice do you have for them to do this, to overcome that and actually shoot their shot?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you don't send the note, you're in the exact same place you were if they rejected you.
That's a good point.
So you can either say, I'm going to send 10 messages to 10 people I've lost touch with, and I'm going to get in touch with 9 of them. Or you can say, I'm going to send 10 messages to people I have lost touch with, and one of them is going to reject me. How much farther along than if you were to say that one who's going to reject me stings too much that I won't send those 10, you're probably looking at it from the wrong angle there.
Yeah.
And I think in most cases you're overcomplicating this. You're thinking too hard. And that's why I try to make the initial sort of reach out, the initial sort of person you talk to, the initial effort small. Because then if it's small and you put a little bit of effort into it and it's successful, then that's great. If you put a lot of effort into it and you're like, I have to have this perfect pitch, and I'm going to spend all this time crafting it, and I'm going to spend all this time teeing up the conversation, I'm going to put all my eggs in this one basket, and then it doesn't work, then you go, wow, that was a waste of time. But if it's just hey, let's get in touch, let's catch up. If somebody doesn't respond, and again, the other thing I say, if people don't respond, again, put yourself in their shoes. Have you ever sat on an email and not responded right away? Have you ever had a LinkedIn message in your box that you haven't responded to right away? Have you ever had a text message you just didn't respond to right away? Most of us have. That's maybe what's going on. that other person's like, I got a billion things going on right now. And yes, I would love to talk to you, Greg, but I'll get around to it when I can respond. So sometimes give people some time to respond, be a little patient. And then I also say, if people didn't respond, go back and look at the message you sent. Was it too strong? Did you ask for too much in the initial outreach? Again, is it the message you'd like to receive? So there's a lot of ways to kind of address that. But I guess I go back to the thing of, if you don't send the message, then you're just sitting there in the same place you were as if they don't respond.
It's a great point, really great point, and you're really de-risking this too, because it truly is no real risk here. And something that you mentioned, but I want to home in on this a little bit more. You said, well, if we send out 10 and 9 people respond, then that's still pretty good. So that's something, as we were talking, I wasn't even considering, but the quantity of people that you reach out to at one time. Because I think if you could put so much into one message, send one message, and then if that one person doesn't respond, it could feel devastating. But if you do multiple, it's not as bad.
Yeah, I subscribe to the either Tiny Habits or Atomic Habits, or whichever author you want to talk about in terms of habits. All our habits come from small actions usually. And so I said 10 to illustrate the 9 out of 10, right?
Yeah.
When we get into how many messages you should send, I would always say send what you can in order to stay consistent. I think consistency is the most important thing. If you have to do one a day, do one a day. If one a day is too much, do one a week. Do what you can to be consistent. Consistency is more important than intensity on this, especially when it comes to networking, because networking takes time. Networking takes waiting on other people to respond, setting up time to sit down and have a conversation with them, waiting for that sort of relationship to develop. So it's going to take a little bit of time. So what's important is that you keep doing it over time in order to grow your network. You can't sit down one weekend and send out 10 or 20 or 100 messages and call it networking. It's something you have to continually do. And I actually think, networking is not an activity you do. It becomes a part of your identity. You become a networker or a connector or somebody who builds their personal community. And you have to look at it from that standpoint. Is not like, this is just a project I'm going to work on for a few weeks. It's something that's going to become a part and a habit of in my life. It's a part of who I am. It's a part of my identity. I think when you do that, it becomes a little bit, it's sort of like when you start working out. If you go to the gym, for a few weeks, then you quit. But if you go to the gym consistently over time, you're not going to the gym. You become someone who is someone who goes to the gym. You become a gym goer. You become somebody who works out. It becomes a part of who your identity is, not just something that you do every once in a while.
That's powerful. And that's the biggest form of shifting behavior, when it becomes who you are rather than just something that you occasionally from time to time do. And I'm wondering, and maybe this is a little bit too kind of, are you ready to take your business marketing to the next level? Meet Brevo, the all-in-one CRM platform to help you connect with customers, boost engagement, and grow your business smarter. With Brevo, you can manage all of your customer interactions in one place, nurture leads with their built-in CRM, reach your audience through email and SMS, and keep them coming back with powerful automations. But here's where it gets really exciting. Meet Aura, Brevo's AI assistant. Aura helps you to craft smarter campaigns by suggesting personalized content, optimizing send times, and even analyzing performance data to help you improve your strategy in real time. It's like having a marketing expert on your team 24/7. And of course, Brevo offers advanced analytics, seamless integrations, and AI-driven personalization. Everything that you need to create multi-channel campaigns that hit the mark every time. And of course, Brevo offers advanced analytics. Get started for free today. Use code ANYTHING50 to save 50% on starter and standard plans for the first 3 months of an annual subscription. Just head to www.brevo.com/anything and take your marketing further with Brevo and Aura. All right, let's talk about something that's actually a negotiation skill. Taking care of yourself before you show up to negotiate with anybody else. Because if you're tired, stressed, and running on fumes, you're going to make worse decisions. Period. And that's why I'm a huge fan of Cozy Earth. Cozy Earth's whole mission is to elevate the everyday with obsessive detail and better materials so you can feel it immediately. Their bamboo pajama set that's made from viscose from bamboo is unbelievably soft. It drapes really nicely, and the classic cuddle blanket, that thing is dangerous because once you wrap up in it, you're not getting anything done. It's plush, it has a comforting weight, and makes your home feel like a reset button. And here's the best part. It is completely risk-free. Cozy Earth gives you a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, so they really stand behind the quality. So this month, show a little extra love to someone you care about or yourself. Go to CozyEarth.com and use my code Kwame for up to 20% off. And if you get a post-purchase survey, make sure to let them know that you heard about Cozy Earth right here. Woo-woo to a certain extent, but I'm wondering, in your experience working with people, have you seen people gravitate more to this activity when they reframe or rebrand what that activity is? Because in your last answer, you said, I am a networker or a connector or a community builder. Have you found that people just are gravitate toward it more when they give themselves permission to rename the activity?
I do, and I wish that there was a better word out there in the world besides networking, because it has so many negative connotations associated with it. We've all had bad networking experiences, and I've tried to use different terms, but then people just really don't kind of get the idea, right? I mean, and so it's unfortunate most people's experiences are negative, and so my sort of mission in the world is to change the way people feel about networking, because I've found it to be a powerful, powerful asset in my life. I truly think of it as an asset, something that I invest in, something I build, and something that provides a huge return for me. But for people who are trying to change their mindset, that's what I try to get them to focus on, is doing things a little bit differently and doing it in a way that works for them. Most of the time we have this image, and this is the negative image we have, of this big room full of strangers. We signed up for an event that we had to travel to somehow. We either drove there or took public transportation, or maybe we walked, but we had to spend some time getting there. We didn't get to pick the time or the location. It was picked for us because the other person set up the event. We have to show up there. We put on some name tags. Maybe there's some food and some drinks. And there's a bunch of people we don't know that we're going to try to walk up to and start talking to, and hope that we forge some sort of connection. And so you talk about, putting a lot of pressure on yourself. To me, that's putting a lot of pressure on yourself.
Yeah.
That's and if you walk away from that, if you spend an hour there and then you have to get home and you've spent 2 to 3 hours at this activity that you hoped you were going to meet somebody new that was going to be somebody you could connect with and develop a relationship with. I mean, if you don't do that, if it's 2 or 3 hours out of your life you're never going to get back. And if you're not comfortable doing that, if that's not your thing, you're probably not going to be very effective at it. And so what I try to get people to do is change the way they think about what networking is. And one of the first things I talked about was starting with who you know. And then the other thing I think people get anxious about or feel awkwardness around is this idea that people are going to think I want something from them, or I'm going to ask them for something. I'm going to ask them to do something for me. And that's kind of true. I mean, you're developing these relationships because you're hoping at some point somebody's going to help you either find a new job or find a new business opportunity or just connect with somebody. What you really want to get into the mindset is this is going to be mutually beneficial. This isn't just for me to help other people or me to get stuff from other people. It's for me to go out and help other people. So I want to connect with people that I can help. And I always want to go into all these conversations with an attitude that I'm going to listen and give to people. Because I think, especially in our world today, we're very much trained to talk and put more words into the world and to get our messages out and all those things. And we've kind of lost that art or that skill of listening to what the other person's saying. Like we don't listen a lot anymore. And that is an opportunity lost, because if we're listening more, we're listening to what the other person is going through, what they're working on, what they're challenged with. We can find the opportunity to help them, and not help them in a big way, help them with an idea, introduce them to somebody new, give them a recommendation of a book or a podcast or an article to read, give them something that they go, wow, I went into this conversation, I sat down and Greg really listened to me. Like a lot of people don't really listen anymore. And so I felt good about talking to Greg because he was listening. And then he helped me out. And so now I'm already sitting here going, I really want to do something for Greg, right? It's a principle of reciprocity, right? He's done all this stuff for me. I really want to help him out. And so I say to Greg, hey, how can I help you? And, when somebody says that to me, I say, yeah, I'm looking to meet this kind of person. I'm looking to meet this person, or I want to learn more about these companies. And, they go, yeah, great. I'd be happy to help you with that. So when you frame it like that, if you're somebody who's awkward or feels awkward going into this situation with these strangers, and you think about it from that point of view, it really takes all the pressure off. When you say, I'm going to go give to other people first, you're like, I can do that. That's easy, right? I'll just go. I feel good. I feel great. I mean, I feel great helping other people. And when I do that, there's a good chance that they're going to say, hey, how can I help you? And then you're in that mutually beneficial relationship where you can help each other. It's not awkward. You're not pitching. You're not trying to sell the other person. You're really just two people that are listening to each other and trying to help each other in the world. So I think that's another reframe or mindset shift, is you don't have to be this perfect person who pitches themselves and says, here's why you should help me. You can get there by helping other people.
Yep. I love this, Greg. And really what you're helping people to recognize is that we need to bring humanity back to these interactions.
Yeah.
This is just fundamentals of human connection, but we lose those fundamentals because we think this is something other than what it really is. And I know for me, and again, this might not be the framing for everybody, but for me, I recognize that I gravitate more toward networking when I just think about it in terms of I'm making friends. That's it. I have my super close friends that I might hang out with, vacation with, and things like that. But then I have some business friends. And my goal is to just turn this into a vibe session that everybody really enjoys, And once I started to think about it like that, it really unlocked deep connections. I remember one time early when I was building the business, I did this speed networking event. So it's essentially speed dating and, 2 minutes and then switch. And it's as awkward as it sounds.
Yeah.
And one of my now really good friends I met there, and it was in October, and he just sat down, and I was after hearing so many people tell me about their business and how they can help me and how they can extract value from me. That's all it was about. First thing he said was, so what are you going to be for Halloween? And we just talked about everything but business and hung out in this little 2-minute session. And so we exchanged numbers and stayed good friends. And then that's how it developed. He was a podcaster. We helped each other grow our shows. We actually went to a conference in Chicago together, a nice road trip, everything. And it was a deep, really cool friendship. And we've added value to each other in different ways. But that wasn't the initial goal. It was just like, hey, I want to connect with you and let's have fun in this little interaction. And that's it.
Yeah. And I think you highlighted it there, is that, the speed networking thing, I wouldn't sign up for that, but and like you said, most of it was awkward, but the one thing that made it not awkward was when your friend just asked you, hey, what's going on in your life?
Right.
Like tell me the real you. Don't give me the pitch version. Don't give me the polished sort of presentation you want to put out there. Just tell me who you are and tell me what you're doing. And that probably puts you more at ease. So you were thinking, oh, okay, this is somebody I can talk to, right? And then you wanted to talk to that person more because he was really listening and paying attention to you. He probably was, right? I mean, if he's going to sit down and ask you that question, he's probably going to pay more attention to you. than somebody who's trying to talk about themselves, right? Because in speed networking, it's like, talk about yourself for 2 minutes, right? And then hopefully you forge a connection. And whereas he's like, I'm going to listen, you talk for 2 minutes. And then you're like, I love talking to this person. I mean, what I tell people, and this is, there's, some science behind this, is people will say, well, if I get in these conversations, like, what should I talk about? And I said, well, first of all, you should ask more questions than talk, right? You should ask better questions. But the question you really need to ask the other person is that question that asks them about their favorite topic. And they go, well, what's their favorite topic? And I go, it's the same for everybody. It's the one thing you know the most about is yourself. Ask them about themselves. Ask them questions about themselves and let them talk about themselves. And they've done the brain scan, the MRIs of the brain, where they are doing the scan while people are being asked questions about themselves, and then they get to talk about themselves. And that part of your brain that controls the dopamine release starts to light up when you talk about yourself. Like, we actually get a hit of dopamine when we talk about ourselves. And so what happens when you get a hit of dopamine? Whatever you're doing at the time, you associate with a good feeling, and it's a feeling you want to have more of. So if you're the other person sitting in front of that person having that conversation, they're going to think, wow, this person that I'm talking to, I really enjoy this. I'm having a good time. I'm talking about myself, and they're also listening to me. So it's that connection happens when you let other people talk about themselves. That's how you grow these deeper relationships. And again, the whole point of this is, it relates to networking, is you want to get to the point where you're helping each other. And I want to get to the point where I'm helping people without having to ask them for help, when they like volunteer and want to help me, so that and then I have to have a good answer for that. That's another key thing, I think, that especially when I talk to people who are looking for jobs or trying to grow their business, I try to tell them before you go into these networking conversations, be very specific about how somebody can help you. Because they're going to ask, if you do this the right way, if you have the right conversation, if you help them, they're going to ask, how can I help you? And the place where you can really mess this up is when you say, you know what, I don't know, I'll just let you know, or nothing right now, I'll get back to you. You've lost that opportunity. So you want to go into these thinking, if this person asks how they can help me, what is the thing I'm really looking for in my life, right? Mm-hmm. And I say my life because, again, sometimes people are looking for a job. And so what I tell people who are looking for a job is, you need to have a very real hard copy or soft copy list of the companies you're interested in working for. You just want to learn about them. Maybe you want to work for them. It's your target company list. And it's got to be a real list. It can't just be something in your head, because you need to actually give it to the person so they can look at it. And you say, I would love to meet somebody at one of these companies that I could talk to and find out what it's like to work there. So do you know anybody at one of these companies? And because it's a physical list, they're sitting there looking at it. And as they're looking at these names, they're scrolling through their mental Rolodex in their brain. And they're like, who do I know? Who do I know? Who do I know? Well, so 3 things can happen. Number one, they go, oh yeah, I know this guy that works at this company. I'd be happy to send an email and introduce you. Boom. Done. Easy. Now you've gotten introduced. You're not cold calling this person. Somebody who they know and trust is introducing them to you. So there's that trust transfers a little. Now you get to have a conversation with that person. This process starts all over again. The second thing is, they look at it and they go, you know what? I don't know anybody at one of these companies, but I see a lot of these companies in this one industry. Have you ever thought of company XYZ, whatever the name of the company is? I know somebody there. And you go, great, introduce me. So there you go. You get introduced. Maybe you learn about a company you never really knew about. And then the third thing is, they say, I don't really know anybody, and you go, it's okay. Take the list with you. Keep it. If you think of somebody later, be sure to let me know. And a lot of times, a surprising number of times, people walk away and they're at their kid's soccer game the next weekend. And they're sitting there talking to one of the other parents, and the parent's like, yeah, I work at this company. And they go, wait a second, I was just talking to a guy who wants to meet somebody at that company. Would you be interested? Could I introduce you to my friend? He was just talking about your company. He would love to just talk to somebody. And they're like, yeah. So you're putting your list into people's head, and without them knowing about it, they're walking around in the world with this list. And when they hear somebody who mentions one of those companies, they're going to say, Greg wants to meet somebody there. I should totally connect him. So that's you have to get very specific, right? And you can't just say, I want to work in high tech, or I want to work in the pharmaceutical industry, or I want to work in healthcare. It's not specific enough. You have to get really, really specific about what you want and how people can help you. And when you do that, they will remember you. The more specific you get, the more they will remember you, the more they will be likely to meet somebody who they can introduce you to. So that's kind of that piece of people have to prepare going into these conversations. And, the other thing I say to people who are building businesses is, they might not have a list of companies they're targeting, but I say to them, what's the problem you solve that, and how does your ideal customer explain that problem? Like, tell me what your ideal customer says, the exact words that come out of their mouth, so that when I hear those words in the world, I know to introduce them to you. And so for example, I was doing a webinar training for a group of people that have businesses where they do medical billing in their homes. So they go to doctors and they say, hey, I can do your medical billing in my home, and it'll take the burden off of you. You don't have to do it anymore, and it'll get done, right? That's what I do. And they need to go meet doctors or people who run medical practices. That's their ideal customer. So I told them, I said, what is the pain that those doctors or those people running those practices have? How do they say it? Because they don't walk around the world going, I'm looking for somebody to help me with my medical billing.
Yeah.
Like, they don't say that. They talk to their friends, and their friends are like, how's business going? And they're like, patients are great, but if I didn't have to file insurance claims and deal with the billing, it would make my life so much easier. So if you say that, if you hear somebody say those exact words, to send them to me, and it's way more memorable. And that's actually what you're going to hear. So, everybody's got a doctor and friends that are doctors or stuff. You're going to talk to them, and then you hear them say, billing is the worst part of my practice. I wish somebody else would do it for me. And you go, I just met this person who runs a business. Could I introduce you to him? So, but you got to tell people that, and you got to get specific. I think that's the other thing about networking is people think about how to pitch themselves, but they don't think about it specifically enough so that people can go out in the world and meet other people and then introduce them to them.
Picture this. It's late at night, you're scrolling, and you finally find the thing that you've been looking for. You add it to your cart, you hit checkout, and then you realize you don't remember your login, your password, or where your card even is. And that's when you see it, that iconic purple Shop Pay button. One tap and checkout is instantly easier. But the bigger story is that Shop Pay is actually powered by Shopify, the commerce platform behind millions of businesses all around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. Shopify helps entrepreneurs to build beautiful stores with ready-to-use templates, get the word out with easy email and social campaigns, and manage everything in one place, from inventory to payments to analytics. See fewer carts go abandoned and more sales go with Spotify and their Shop Pay button. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/Kwame. Go to shopify.com/Kwame. That's shopify.com/Kwame. Here's a quick warning for everyone listening. Scams and identity theft usually don't start with some genius hacker. Most of the time, it's just because your personal data is so easy to find online. I'm talking about people search sites, shady directories, and places where anyone can pull up your address, phone number, and even your relatives' info. And then they use that leverage to impersonate you or target your family. And that's how these scams usually work. That's why I've been using Incogni. Instead of you spending hundreds of hours manually trying to opt out of these sites yourself, Incogni just automates the whole thing. They act as your proxy, taking down your data and demanding its removal from databases you've probably never heard of. And the thing is, this isn't just a one-time fix. Data has a way of popping back up, so Incogni continuously monitors these sites in the background to make sure your information stays deleted. I personally recommend the Family Unlimited plan. It's the best way for you to cover your entire household. It includes custom removals, so if you ever find a specific page exposing your family's info, you just send Incogni the link and their privacy experts handle the manual takedown for you. You can get your data back risk-free with Incogni's 30-day money-back guarantee. And if you use the code ANYTHING at incogni.com/anything, you'll get 60% off an annual plan. Again, that's incogni.com/anything. Code ANYTHING. Yeah, this is powerful because I think that specific ask portion of this is one of the biggest fumbles that people have in this process. And introducing a bit more psychology, because you opened the door, Greg. Now my nerdiness has been unleashed.
Okay.
Because when you think about reciprocity, the norm of
Mhm.
reciprocity, one element of reciprocity that people often overlook is the temporal aspect of it. When
Mhm.
somebody feels a sense of gratitude and then they say, "How can I help you?" That is when they are in their most persuadable and generous state. If you just
Mhm.
say at this time, "Oh, nothing. If something comes up, I'll tell you," and then a week later, not even a week, like a day or two later, the amount of desire or craving or
Mhm.
sense of almost obligation that they have to help you has diminished significantly. And the
Mhm.
longer you get from that feeling of gratitude to make your ask, the less persuasive it will be. And so, and a lot of times you don't even recognize the value that you're giving to people, because like you
Mhm.
said, we've become a society of people who talk but do not listen. And then
Mhm.
if you become one of those few people who could listen in a way that gets the brain to release all of that dopamine, you become uniquely memorable, where they say,
Mhm.
I can't remember the last time somebody listened to me with the level of reverence and respect that Greg did. I feel so good talking to you in a way that I haven't felt with other people. Thank you.
Mhm.
What can I do to help you?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
where it comes from. It's not a throwaway line. There's so much
Mhm.
psychology behind this.
Well, and people want to help. They do, and like you said, when you in that moment, they really wanna help, and that not being specific or not telling them what they can do for you, you're robbing them of that feeling. Like, you are doing them a disservice making it hard. If you make yourself hard to help, they're, like, disappointed because 'cause they're like, "I really, really wanted to help. I was really primed to help, and then you made it hard, and now I feel like a little bit like I got ripped off in the whole transaction," right? I mean, it's not a transaction, but I got I got ripped off in this because I was ready to do something. And I think we don't realize it, but we really want the karmic scales of the universe to always be balanced.
Yeah.
If somebody goes, "Hey, I let me help you," and then you go, "I want to help you back," and you can't, you feel bad about that.
You're absolutely right. And to that point, when it comes to hold on, you still there? I
Yeah,
got a
I'm
little
there.
glitch. Okay, cool.
I'm here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And when it comes to the letting people help you, one of the things that we don't fully appreciate is the fact that people will like you more when you allow them to help you. And
Mhm,
it's counterintuitive because we always think, "Oh, okay, if somebody is helping me, I'm getting something from them." And yes,
mhm,
we are. But when you think about what they call the Benjamin Franklin effect,
mhm,
when you help somebody, you have to then justify to yourself why you're helping this person. And so the story back in the day was there was a person who Benjamin Franklin, they had beef with each other. That's
mhm.
the precise term that they used back in the day. Um, and and so Benjamin Franklin said the relationship turned around when he asked to borrow a book, and the gentleman let him borrow a book, and he was very nice and friendly going forward. And
Yeah.
so when we help people and do something nice to somebody else, in order to avoid any element of cognitive dissonance, we have to justify it and say, well, I helped Greg in this circumstance because I like Greg. And so, again, we are not just doing ourselves a disservice by not being specific with our request at that point, but we're doing them a disservice because they want to feel good by helping you, and the relationship as a whole a disservice because we're not deepening the relationship by being mutually beneficial to each other.
I think that's the other thing that people, we've been talking about mindsets and how to get past some of the negative mindsets of networking. When you talk about it in those terms and you think about it like that, it does become very much like not like networking, but about conversations and developing relationships and deepening that connection. It takes on a much more positive feel than just going to an event or a speed networking event or just like shaking hands or doing something like that. It moves more towards a relationship and less towards that transactional state or nature that the people dislike about networking.
Exactly. Agreed. And let's talk about a word that you brought up a couple of times, but I think we should give this some particular focus, and that's the reality of awkwardness. I think this is one of people's biggest fears when it comes to these conversations, especially when they're new at this networking, relationship building, however they decide to frame it. For people who have that fear of those awkward moments or awkward conversations, what advice do you have for them?
Well, I think a couple things we've already said. One of those is part of that is if you're talking to somebody you've never talked to before, you're going to worry about what to say. So a couple of the antidotes for that is start with people because those people, you already have something in common with them. That's not going to be a hard conversation. You're going to get to a point where those people introduce you to somebody new. And when they do, and you meet with somebody new, again, it's not like they're totally unknown to you because they have a connection in common with you. So you focus on who's that connection in common, and you can talk about that. I think when you get into the conversation, like I said, I always focus on asking questions because that means I can sort of anticipate or plan for the questions I'm going to ask. And so you maybe think of some questions that are not just how are you, what's new, but hey, what's the most exciting thing that happened in the last month? Or what are you looking forward to this month? Or, if you're at a time in the year, a lot of people talk about networking around the holidays. If you're coming up on the holidays, maybe the end of year holidays, you can say, hey, how was your year? Like, or what's the thing you're going to do next year? Or, you can get even deeper and say, I'm curious, like, what's something that, I don't know about you, most people don't know about you, but you wish they did. And it's a better question because you're giving them permission to talk about something they normally don't get to talk about, and they want to talk about. So the second part of the question is the most important part, because if you say, what's something that people don't know about you, and you just leave it at that, people are going to be like, hey, there's a lot of things I don't really want to share, right? But if you say, what's something people don't know about you, but you wish they did, then it's like, they might be like, hey, you know what? I love, I sing in my church choir on Sundays, or I really wish I could sing, better, or I've always wanted to, become a pilot. I don't know, something like that they maybe don't share with a lot of people, but they really would like to. And so, just thinking of better questions as you go into these conversations. If you're going to prepare anything, I would prepare better questions. And you also have to be ready to answer that question you ask. So don't ask a question that you don't want to give the answer to, because of course, in the spirit of reciprocity, after you ask them that question, the answer, they're going to say, well, what about you? What's something about you that most people don't know that you wish they did? And so, you're going to have to be ready to answer that question, which can provide a great dialogue, right? And a much more comfortable, less awkward conversation. So I think, those are a couple things when you go into the conversation that, if you think about those a little bit, you can maybe get past some of that awkwardness of what are we going to say, what are we going to talk about, and maybe make it a little more comfortable conversation.
That's smart. That's really smart. One of the simple rules I follow is that if I don't know what to say next, the next thing I should say should come in the form of a question. You
Mhm.
know, it's a nice, easy way to keep things going. But again, taking the time to prepare is something that people often overlook. Just taking the time to write down a list of questions that you could ask. If you're feeling tech savvy or lazy, whichever way you want to go with it, you could ask generative AI to come up
Sure.
with a list of questions.
Exactly.
You
I
know?
I mean, you could literally say, I'm about to go talk to this person. Here's their background. Here's how I know them. Here's what's going on. We're going to talk. I just need some good suggestions for questions. And I mean, you probably have way more questions than you could ever possibly ask from that. So, um, and probably some that you'd be like, wow, oh, that's a great question. So,
Mhm.
it's definitely a good use there of AI.
Oh yeah, people are running out of excuses, Greg, on why they can't have these conversations. Let me ask
Yep.
you one more question before we bring in Simone, because this is one thing that I hear a lot too when it comes to personality, maybe neurodiversity. Somebody might say I'm an introvert or I feel a little uncomfortable. I don't perform well in these conversations. And I think there's a bias that we have again, not against, about people who are great networkers and relationship builders, and we say, oh, they're very extroverted, they love to talk all the
Mhm.
time. And I want to get your thoughts on that. When it comes to that particular concern that people have,
Yeah.
I don't have the right personality for this.
Yeah, I mean, that's usually my main audience. I talk directly to introverts. My newsletter is called The Introverted Networker. I call myself the Introverted Networker on LinkedIn. I generally focus on how to make networking more comfortable for people who aren't extroverted. Now, that doesn't mean that these same things won't work for extroverts. They'll work for anybody, but they're more tailored to people who do feel like there is a group of people out there that can just talk and meet people. And look, I'm married to one of those people. I have two kids. I have one that is one of those people, and I have another one that is just like me, totally introverted. We are split down the middle. And I often look at, my wife and my son, like they'll talk to anybody, never met a stranger, no problem. I mean, my son does door-to-door sales.
Oh
He's
wow.
quite good at it, and he's still in college, but he does it in the summer, and he goes and he sells and wins the sales trip every year and stuff like that. So no issues for him, like talking to people he doesn't know. But I would say that doesn't make him any better at networking, so to speak, because just because you can talk to somebody easily doesn't mean you're establishing a relationship. It doesn't mean you're listening to them. It doesn't mean that you're going to continue that connection. And so I would say introverts have that skill of listening more than they talk, and also asking questions, and all these things we've talked about, I think, are all skills that introverts do better at, being more in tune with the other person, how they're reacting, and those are qualities that help you develop relationships that will be valuable to you as you go through life. So yes, usually a lot of people, and I have had some people tell me, hey, I'm neurodivergent. I struggle with social situations, and I think what I would say to them is, have you ever had a good conversation with somebody? Like, have you sat down and had a good conversation at some point in your life? And usually they're like, yeah, well, yeah. I mean, the people I know, and I say, well, there you go. Right. Let's start there. Let's start with getting more comfortable having more of these conversations and really being intentional with them, with people who it's low risk. You can get comfortable. You can get some practice. You can feel some success. And then you say, okay, now I could maybe move on to somebody that maybe I don't know as well. I'm still going to have the same conversation, practice the same skills, see if I can have some success with that. And as I do this more, I'm probably going to get a little more confident. I may not ever get to be, the greatest conversationalist that there was or that I want to be, but you're going to get better when you do these things more and when you have these conversations. So again, I always go back to, have you ever had a good interaction, a good conversation? And most people have, right? I mean, of course, there's going to be some people who are like, no, never. But I think most people have had at some point in their life a decent conversation. So they probably had way more decent conversations than awkward conversations. They're just remembering the awkward conversations because those are the ones that stick with us. So, it's kind of, again, back to are you going to focus on the one person who didn't respond or the other 9 people who did? So are you going to focus on the one bad conversation you had or the other conversations in your life that were good and went somewhere?
This is great. And Greg, I'm glad that we focused on that positive too, because a lot of times, just because of negativity bias, we will just remember disproportionately the things that didn't go well. I think everybody there's
Oh
probably
yeah,
a mixtape of embarrassing moments that we've been playing since high school,
sure.
but it's still just a handful of moments, but they loom large in our mind. And just a word to the folks who are more introverted too, and this might not seem relevant immediately, but I'll bring it back. What I've found, or not, what a lot of coaches have found in different sports is that if you have an athlete that is naturally really big and strong for their age, they can rely on the strength and athleticism and not need skills
Mm-hmm.
because that's all they've needed. But then once other people kind of catch up, the people who were forced to develop those skills end up oftentimes outperforming the folks who are naturally gifted. And what I've
Yep.
found is that when I'm coaching people who need help with communication and things like that, oftentimes if I'm building a communicator, the person who is more introverted they have a really strong foundation for a strong communication skills because like you said, they are more naturally inclined to listen. They're often a little bit more observant and paying attention to the nuances of what somebody else is doing and saying. And then if you build their confidence for them to be more willing to speak up and say their piece,
Mm-hmm.
it's a little bit more natural for them to do the other parts of the conversation that are a little bit more generous for other people.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I think we've eliminated the final excuse. Introversion is not an excuse for not
Yeah.
networking.
Yeah. I mean, I think the other one is that I get a lot is I don't have time. And that goes back to this make the action smaller. Same with making it a habit. But if you can just do 5 to 15 minutes of sending out messages, or even if people think I got to go have coffee with somebody, you can have a 15-minute phone call with somebody. Right? Networking doesn't have to be lunch. It doesn't have to be happy hour. It doesn't have to be a coffee. It'd be 15 minutes on the phone or on video call. I mean, I try to encourage people to have voice to voice conversations because you can get so much more from actually hearing the person's voice. In person is great, but even people I know in town that I could go drive to sit down with them, it's still a lot of time. So if I can have a 15-30 minute call with them, I can give a really deep, meaningful conversation with them in that period of time. And it doesn't have to dominate my day. And I'm more likely to do that than try to drive around town 5 times a week and meet with people and have coffee. I like to do that occasionally, but I also, know that I can connect with way more people, build more relationships, get introduced to more people, introduce people to each other if I'm having more of these conversations in, again, 15, 30 minutes. So I think
Mm.
if you get past that and you start thinking about it differently, you go, oh, maybe I do have time to do this once a week. And if you do that once a week, if you haven't been networking, you do it once a week. Think of if you got introduced to 52 more people in a year. That would really be a lot. And you don't need to get introduced to that many people. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't really need to know that many people, but you could theoretically meet a new person each year or each week for a year and have 52 new connections in your network.
It's amazing. That's such a powerful point because we often do put a lot into these events in terms of like expanding the time and the level of commitment. And Keith Ferrazzi, he's been on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Great mind when it comes to networking. And the
Mm-hmm.
book was called Never Eat Alone, that put
Mm-hmm.
him on the map. And I did that as much as I could. Especially if
Yeah,
you're younger in your career,
sure.
it can get kind of expensive. But what I've started to do more recently is just like you said, I just call them walking meetings. I'm going to be walking. Let's just hop on the phone and talk for
Yeah.
15 minutes. And it diminishes the barrier to entry for both parties. You can usually spare 15 minutes, especially for a friend. And then it makes it especially if you're afraid of awkwardness, makes it less likely to experience awkwardness too, because it's a shorter conversation.
Yeah. You know it's going to end soon, and you're like, I just, if it gets awkward, we'll be done and we'll move on. But usually it doesn't. Usually what happens is you start off for 15 minutes and then you get your 15-minute walk done and you find yourself still standing there talking for another 5, 10, 15 minutes. It goes on because you're having this really great conversation. So really, again, a lot of what I talk about, what I tell people is like, get rid of the barriers, right? Change your mindset, whatever you need to do to make it easier so you do it. And like you said, you've been eliminating the excuses through this conversation is what I'm always trying to do is like, let's stop the excuses. This is a really powerful thing for you to do. And if once you start doing it and you see the results of it, you're going to say, why didn't I start doing this sooner?
Exactly. Yes. This is great, Greg. And before we go, because I know we're coming up on time, I want to give Simone an opportunity to pop in and ask us questions. So, Simone, what's been on your mind?
I want to talk about pressure as a barrier. I came to live to Canada 2 years ago. I am from South America. So I said I need to get to know people here somehow. So I decided two things. One, to get to know people, I decided to go to meetup sessions, like getting to know people. But to make exercise, to do exercise, I decided to find a soccer team. So I tried to make new friends in these meetup sessions, and it was impossible because I felt pressured. But
Mhm.
in the soccer team, I made lots of friends because I was not thinking about that.
Mhm.
So like and I am more introvert here in Canada because I am self-conscious about my language. So it was not as easy as it was back
Mhm.
in Argentina because my door opener is humor, and it's very difficult to make a joke in a second language, right? So I couldn't make any friends in the meetup session, but now I'm full of friends. But in the soccer like part of my life, my soccer
Yeah.
team. So
Yep.
that is very interesting. So how pressure is like something that makes it more difficult, right?
Yeah, because when you were going to these meetups, you felt pressure because you went into it thinking this is how you network. I got to go to this place and I've got to impress these people and really try to meet them and develop these relationships. But you didn't get to pick the time. They were already set for you. You had to go whenever it was. And you really went into them like, I want to make the most of my time and I've got to meet people and connect. So everything was about how you came across. And so that pressure that you were talking about made it probably uncomfortable. And you couldn't really relax. You couldn't be yourself. But you joined the soccer club and you're being yourself. You're not worried thinking I have to be somebody for these people. I'm just going to go play soccer. We all love soccer. And so we're going to enjoy that together. And so when you relaxed, you can start to let who you are come out and really the other people can see you as well and start to say, oh, this is who Simone is, right? He's this guy who likes soccer. He's from Argentina. He tries to be funny, but it's kind of doesn't come across in the second language, right? And so they're like, that's great, right? We are all sharing something in common, and the lack of pressure just lets you be less awkward and feel more comfortable. So I'm glad you brought that up because this goes back to what I was talking about. If we meet people in the activities and the things we do in our normal lives, we don't usually meet people when we go to networking events.
Right.
And so that's why you have to think of all the people around you, from the soccer club to where you work to other organizations you're in. That's your network. Those are the people who you want to connect with and have those relationships with. And then as and I don't know if this has happened yet, but for the people you play soccer with, there's probably some people that would introduce you to other people, introduce you to new people. If you started talking to them saying like, hey, this is what I'm looking to do, they probably know somebody. And then it just gets less awkward and less awkward. So I think that's such a great example and such a great dichotomy that you kind of put out there of the thing you're supposed to do and go network is actually not that effective. We have to meet people and grow connections. And again, that's why I hate the word sort of networking, because it's just really about meeting people and developing relationships and connections. Not because like I'm going to spend every weekend with them or they're going to be my best friend, but just because we have a common interest, we like each other, we want to help each other. Let's have more of those people in our life than people that we just kind of tried to impress at a networking event.
So good. And what I love about this is that it really comes back to authenticity. I love this approach because you're really giving people the permission to be themselves, make
Yeah.
friends, and create connections. And you've simplified this in a way that I think is really that'll make people gravitate to this in a way that they probably haven't before.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. It's almost like you've done this for a living or something, Grant. I love it. Well,
Yeah.
hey, listen, before you go, can you let the listeners know about the incredible newsletter that you have and how they could work with you too?
Yeah, so I write a weekly newsletter. It's called The Introverted Networker. It's on Substack. You could either look there, or if you want to follow me on LinkedIn, if you go look me up, if you look up The Introverted Networker, it's in my title, so you should be able to find me. All of my links to the newsletter, I post every weekday there, and most surprisingly, I talk about networking. And so if you just want, again, follow me there, you can find the newsletter. Go look for it on Substack. But that's where I give my sort of best tips and advice on how to be a more confident, better networker. And like I said, I'm really just trying to change the way people feel about networking, because as I said, in my life, in a lot of people's lives that I've worked with, they've seen how powerful it can be, and powerful in such a good way for not just themselves, but all the people around them.
Incredible. Greg, thank you so much for joining us today. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
love it. Thank you for having me on.
Boom. There we